Truth Unveiled here, and today I have some important information to share with you. In case you haven't heard about it, it has to do with Turkey and the military coup, as well as martial law being declared in Turkey. And if you don't think this is coming to America, I suggest you think again, because I'm here at Defense News and it says Turkish military declares martial law. The Prime Minister says coup attempt will fail. And we're going to be talking about this, and we're going to be talking about the president's statement and more about this to come in just a second, because it's important that you stay updated with the world around you, but that you also see the bigger agenda behind all this, because here at Defense News it even says that the state-run agency reported 17 police officers that have been killed in a helicopter attack on police special forces headquarters near Ankara. And then the agency said that Turkish Air Force planes were flying above Turkey's capital early Saturday to strike at helicopters used by those attempting the coup. And the Turkish broadcaster NTV reported that a Sikorsky helicopter in possession of the army group has been downed by a Turkish military F-16 jet. And in Washington, D.C. specifically, Mr. Obama urged all parties in Turkey to support the government of President Erdogan. And then also Turkish news agency Dogan reported soldiers fired on people who were trying to cross Istanbul's Bosporus Bridge, and some were in fact wounded. Now it goes on to say how the deputy prime minister said that the Turkey's ruling Justice and Development Party is still in charge of the government, and how the military units patrolled the streets and seized key bridges as the Turkish military declared martial law, and said in a statement read out in Turkish television that it had, quote, fully seized control of the country. But of course this was an attempt, and it of course failed. And it goes on to talk about that during this time nobody knew of Mr. Erdogan's whereabouts. At least this is what they're telling us. And in fact, the senior U.S. military source, at least this is what they're telling us, has even told NBC News that Erdogan refused landing rights in Istanbul and is reported to be seeking asylum in Germany. And of course, it could not immediately be independently confirmed. Of course, the people of Turkey, they responded with riots and everything, despite all the sounds of explosions and the gunfire that occurred in Istanbul. But even as the coup attempt unfolded, we even saw security forces in Istanbul that blocked two of the bridges connecting the Anatolian side of the European side of the city, and travelers reported on their Twitter accounts that airlines were stopped from taking off while military aircraft were seen flying over Ankara, the capital. In fact, one of the agencies of Turkey reported that police in Ankara called personnel to their officers. In addition, media reports said ambulances were seen in front of Turkey's military headquarters, and the state-run agency reported that the chief of general staff is being kept as a hostage, and many others, according to the Hurriyet Daily News. Now, Military Times also reports on this, and this is of course courtesy USA Today, but it even says Turkish military declares martial law, Erdogan urges street protests, and this was as of yesterday, of course, and it talks about much of what we've already been talking about as military units patrolled the streets and seized the key bridges so that these bridges could no longer be accessible to people who were trying to come in and out of the city. Not only that, but we also talked about how the airports were shut down as well. What do you think they're really getting ready for? But what's also interesting is when they talk about the Pentagon and their statement released on this, where the Pentagon even says, quote, we are monitoring the situation in Turkey closely and are taking appropriate steps to ensure the safety and security of our service members, civilians, their families, and our facilities. As of this time, there has been no impact to Incirlik Air Base, and counter ISIL air operations from Incirlik continue, and I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. It goes on to say that NBC News reported later that the threat level at the airbase has been raised to, quote, Delta. But what if I told you that the Pentagon had something to do with this as well? What if I told you that all those alphabet soups and intelligence agencies were all conspiring to do these things? And what if I told you that this is just another test for the elite and just another test run to get ready for martial law when they finally bring it to America? It's not a question of if, but rather it's a question of when. And it's also interesting how they also lit up one of the bridges there with red, white, and blue to bring back, of course, what happened with the Nice attacks. And I'll leave that link below so you can learn more about that. That just so happened to occur the day before. And mind you, this happened around the same time as the event Reset 2016 that occurred today in Washington, D.C. And we see that all of this is right before the national conventions that are taking place in America in the next few days, as well as the Olympics, which are supposed to be taking place in the next few weeks from now. So we see all this stuff is going on leading up to the alleged elections for America in November. Do you see what's going on? I hope so. Now, what's also interesting about all of this is what Express reports actually, because we're hearing it even says Turkish people take to the street to celebrate after a military coup to oust Erdogan fails. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Istanbul to celebrate after a military coup to oust the president of Turkey, Erdogan, failed. And we're going to talk more about this, but what you're going to see is that he announced some very interesting and suspicious things indeed. Sounds like martial law to me, and also sounds like the limiting of rights and freedoms, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm going to keep going, and of course it talks about how the crowds answered and responded to this, and how it came after so-called intelligence sources revealed that the Turkish troops taking part in an orchestrated military coup had taken over a frigate and captured the head of the Turkish fleet. No, it's all orchestrated by the elite and the alphabet soups and by all those terrorist alphabet soups to begin with. But let's keep going, because then it even talks about how it even says that the coup was 90% over and that President Erdogan returned to Istanbul to address his supporters, and these are some of the things that they even talked about. It says the country's ruling party has already said it would bring back the death penalty to punish the instigators of a military coup that left 265 people dead and nearly 1,500 injured. Government authorities have arrested 2,839 plotters, according to them, and that includes 100 military officers at an air base in the southeast of the country. In fact, the Turkish Prime Minister has even vowed to bring in a, quote, new legal measures to ensure that such an uprising can never occur or happen again, after President Erdogan made a triumphant return to Istanbul this morning. And I hope you see how all of this is staged and coordinated ahead of time. I also hope that you see the problem, reaction, solution behind all this, because they, as in the elite, they stage all of these things ahead of time. They cause the problems, and then they offer their own reaction, which is to get everyone in upheaval, everyone in an uproar. And this is exactly how they do that. But then they tell you that, oh, now that everything is taken care of by their own solutions, now their solution is to bring in more new legal measures along with martial law. Don't you know what that means? Don't you know what that's talking about? Limited rights and freedoms. They're turning it into a dictatorship, a one world government, literally right in front of our faces. You never had rights to begin with, and it's only a matter of time until these things start trickling, not just in Turkey and the Middle East, but also in Europe and finally America as well. And we already see that with France, because what just happened, the French president has even extended the state of national emergency with France from July 26th all the way until the end of October, which means the entire nation of France would have been under a state of national emergency for almost 11 months, close to a year. And you don't think that's coming to America? You don't think that's a test and preparation for America and the rest of Europe, period? I suggest you seriously think again, wake up to the world around you, and see just where we are and see what's about to take place. Oh, but it doesn't stop there, because I'm here at RT and it even says Turkish military declares takeover of country. Top officials were reportedly taken hostage. And the reason I'm here is because I want you to also see what they also did as a result of this military coup and how it's all staged, predicted, and planned ahead of time. But it even goes on to talk about, and it even shows video footage, which I highly recommend you watch on your own time. I'll be sure to leave all of the helpful links in the description box below. But it even says that heavily armed soldiers and military vehicles closed the two main bridges in Istanbul Friday evening, and while low-flying military jets could be heard overhead. Wow, interesting that this happened on a Friday, because wasn't there someone who was talking about the 72-hour warning for martial law and that it would begin on a Friday, just like X-Files Season 10 also told us that as well? Is it starting to make sense now? Are you starting to see the test done ahead of time and conducted ahead of time? I hope so, but let's keep going because it also says around midnight local time, a TRT anchor announced the country was now run by a peace council that will ensure the safety of the population. Oh, and that includes bringing in the military because that really will ensure the safety, won't it? But let's keep going. Tanks have now been posted outside Istanbul's airport and in other locations in the city, and there could be more because this is just what they're telling us, of course. But this is the interesting part where it says access to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube is being blocked, while the state-owned TRT television has gone off the air. According to reports from Inside Turkey, its website shows whether some people illegally undertook an illegal action outside of the chain of command, the Prime Minister said in comments that were broadcast by the private channel and TV. Now, of course, this is not the first time that Turkey has been under a military coup like this. In fact, it's not even the second time either, but why this is so important with this time is so that you can see exactly what they're doing and getting ready for, and how the military is literally ready to go in any place they choose, not just Turkey, not just the Middle East, but anywhere they deem necessary. Now, CNN also summarizes what happened, and of course, this is just what they're telling us. We should never take what they tell us at face value, but they summarize it and they say that an attempted coup overnight left at least 161 dead and another 1,440 people were injured. The government has said that it remains in control following a coup attempt by some members of the military. And the question I have for you is, what if they decided to do this in America, because the United Nations is even ready to go? But let's keep going. It even says that 2,839 military officers have been detained, a source in the president's office had said. Turkish military authorities have closed the airspace around Turkey's airbase, the site Turkey allows the U.S. to use for operations related to its air campaign against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, a U.S. defense official told CNN on Saturday, even though we know who funds ISIS to begin with. But let's keep going. Pentagon has confirmed air operations at the base have been halted. The Turkish foreign minister has tweeted that 8 alleged coup plotters who fled to Greece are to be sent back to the country, Turkey, and the Prime Minister of Turkey has even called for the people to return to the streets armed with flags and protest against the coup on Saturday night. Now, notice how they're also pushing this chaos agenda too, because if you look at some other articles that they post and that mainstream media is pushing, you see the word chaos all over the place. Chaos erupts here, chaos erupts there, because what are they trying to do? Order out of chaos. That is how they plan their new world order, and it's important that you see the warning signs ahead of time. Now, is it just me, or am I seeing way too many coincidences when it comes to this one event? Because not only did we see everything that happened with the military coup as well as martial law being declared, and not only that, but the military even being deployed onto the streets of Turkey, but we also even see how they're getting ready and how they even shut off all the internet so that internet can no longer be accessed in parts of Turkey, as well as how the bridges were being blocked off in Turkey as well. What does that sound like to me? Is they're getting ready for an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, not to mention the event Reset 2016 led by the Pulse movement was today, and the United Nations just so happened to announce and declare that this year was the year of the pulses. Is all that a coincidence? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. But the very last place I wanted to take you to was actually here at the statement that President Erdogan made, and he even says they will pay a very heavy price for this act of treason. Now, I'm not going to go over all of this, but you can come read it on your own time so you can see the statement that he made. But what's interesting is when he even says that what, Turkey isn't the old Turkey. What does that sound like? Out with the old and in with the new world order even at the door. But let's keep going, because he also even talks about the troops and what they did. He even says, quote, "This is an act of treason and uprising. They will pay a very heavy price for this act of treason. Let me express this clearly," unquote. So as you can see, it's only getting from bad to worse. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, because as you can see, there's too much going on. Time is running out literally. But this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated with the latest and saying shalom.